Welcome everyone to another episode of the Will Rock MMA podcast. Let's start off with some news, guys. We're going to work into our main event of UFC 229, McGregor versus Khabib, or should I say Khabib. News, we got Max Holloway versus Brian Ortega at UFC 231. This is taking place in Toronto, Canada. It's about time, right? So first fight they were supposed to fight, that was the biggest downside in my personal MMA experience, because they were supposed to fight in Brooklyn. That was supposed to be the main event. Max Holloway could not make the fight because of medical reasons. He wasn't clear to fight, and then Brian Ortega decided to drop from the fight. It was one of the biggest disasters the UFC has ever encountered. That fight was that was a nightmare. UFC lost a ton of money. But granted, I did entertain myself in watching those fights. But yeah, could not wait for someone like Max Holloway to come back, the champion, to come back and fight someone like Brian Ortega, who is long overdue to see the octagon. He's been out for so long. So that's one thing, guys. Let's work into the next thing. Next thing is Shane O'Malley. The great Shane O'Malley is going to be a massive pause for us. He got caught out there doing steroids. People were contemplating whether he failed his drug test because of marijuana or if it was just steroids. You cannot be dropped out of a card of marijuana till after your fight's over. So that is false information. He did get caught out there with some sort of steroids, something. There's something in the system that caused for them to drop him off the card. Sad, man. So freaking sad. Someone like him who has all the world in front of him, somebody who's the next in line to be the next great, has all the charisma, has the looks, has everything a superstar needs. Shane O'Malley has it. Dropped the ball on this one. Cannot wait to see him back in the octagon. I'm actually curious if they're going to continue to put him against the fighter they had him going up against, or maybe a bigger name. Maybe he drew more attention to his name at this point. Who knows what the UFC is planning on doing with him. Anyways, guys, I can't wait to talk about UFC 229. UFC 229 is probably the biggest card in UFC history. Why? McGregor versus Khabib. Main card. These guys are going to go head to head. But before we get started with the main event, let's talk about who's going to be part of the main card. The main card, you got Felice Herring versus Michelle Hottie Watterson. This fight is going to be... I'm a little in shock that the UFC is planning to start this fight as the first fight in the pay-per-view. We're so driven into women's MMA right now. Why not make this either the third or the co-main event? I'm still curious to know why they have someone like Derek Lewis versus Alexander Volkov in this pay-per-view event. These two girls are going to go at it. I can't put together who's really going to win this fight.
I'm going with Michelle just because she's the bigger name. I'm going with Michelle because she's easier to promote. She's bringing the right fans going into the UFC event, especially driving this women's MMA that the UFC is dying to see who's the next life and who's the next face of the Ronda Rouseys and Chris Cyborgs and Amanda Nunes. So Michelle Watterson is bringing that heat, and we'll see who wins that fight. I got Michelle winning just because she's the bigger name coming into this fight. Next fight, we got Derek Lewis versus Alexander Volkov. Now, big news about this fight. Reason, last time Derek Lewis ended up fighting, Derek Lewis ended up putting probably the biggest sleeper of someone like Francis Ngannou, and the fight turned out to be the biggest disaster the UFC's probably ever seen at heavyweight. Both fighters were scared to throw punches. The only reason why we decided to give Derek Lewis the pass was because he had back spasm during the fight. You don't get breaks when you fight someone like Alexander Volkov. Alexander Volkov will bring the heat to the octagon. I am extremely happy they put these two guys together, because there's no way this fight is passing the second round. And if it does pass the second round, Derek Lewis stands no chance. I was reading this article that Derek Lewis is planning on going in 100%, throwing all his tank on the first round.
which is going to be very interesting for someone like Derek Lewis, who knows damn well that he needs to pace himself for this fight, because he won't last. He won't come off that first round with any tank left with him, not unless he really gets the TKO, which he's known to do in the first round. Really looking forward to that. We got next fight. I'm sorry about that, guys. We got Dominic Reyes versus OSP. OSP is one of these fighters who loses one fight, comes back and wins on dramatic fashion, whether it's a weird freaking submission move, whether it's his hands, his speed. This guy's built like he's a football player, ex-football player, who has the speed and the mass that goes behind it. And you take someone like that and you give him full round skills in MMA, he's a freaking animal and he's a force to be reckoned with. I do have OSP beating Dominic Reyes. I'm not familiar with Dominic Reyes as much as I am with OSP. I know what OSP brings to the table is the reason why I'm going for OSP. Co-main event, guys. Holy crap, co-main event. Just thinking about it gives me the goosebumps. We got Tony Ferguson versus Anthony Pettis. Who wins this fight? I am so drawn. I can't figure out who's going to win this fight, actually. We're talking about two of the biggest names in lightweight. You got someone like Tony Ferguson who got a nasty injury and was forced out of the Khabib fight. And then you have someone like Anthony Pettis who just came out of a devastating victory, and somebody who is bound to either fight for that belt, or someone like Tony Ferguson who is, these two guys are one step away of fighting the Khabib versus a Conor McGregor fight. I have Anthony Pettis going into this fight. Why? Momentum. He has momentum running up against him. He looks so much looser. He made weight without any hesitation. Not taking something away from Tony Ferguson. My biggest fear with Tony Ferguson is that he's coming off a really, really bad injury, and he's taking so much time off. Is what Tony Ferguson are we going to see? And are we going to see Tony Ferguson who's going to stand and bang, or are we going to see Tony Ferguson who's going to go with full-blown jiu-jitsu? I think Anthony Pettis has the momentum going for this fight. I think Anthony Pettis has a lot more driving into him going into this fight, and not to mention that his little brother Sergio Pettis is fighting in the undercard. I think he's the main card in the preliminaries, which is something to watch as well. I got Anthony Pettis winning this, man, and I'll tell you this much: before I even got into front of this camera, I was thinking to myself, who am I going to pick between these two fighters? Because Tony Ferguson has proven over and over again how tough he is, how smart of an MMA fighter he is, and he's one of these guys who's just so well-rounded in his division that he's a force to be reckoned with. Only reason why I'm going Anthony Pettis is because he has the momentum going. He's somebody who just came off a victory, and he's one of these guys that you give him leverage and he just takes it with him. So kudos to Anthony Pettis in this fight. Let's see what both of these fighters are willing to bring to the octagon. Last but not least, we got Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Conor McGregor. Man, I got so much mixed feelings about this card. I get asked every single day, who you got going? Who you going to go for? If Khabib decides to take this to the ground and make this a wrestling match, Conor McGregor stands absolutely no chance with Khabib. I'll tell you what makes Conor McGregor the draw for this fight. Actually, numbers just came in. I think it was 3 million for McGregor in this fight and 2 million for Khabib in this fight. Khabib, as much of an amazing fighter you are, thank Conor McGregor for making you a millionaire. All right, thank him. What can I not say about Conor McGregor, dude? Conor McGregor, first of all, is by far one of the best rounded fighters in MMA. People think that he's just a showsman, that he loves to make this thing, but guess what? McGregor has been doing crazy shit and backing it up every single time he walks into the octagon. Every single time. You know, as much as people didn't give him enough credit in the ring versus Mayweather, he still put on a freaking show. He still put on some sort of scare for Mayweather. Granted, Mayweather completely outboxed him and ended up winning the fight. I think Conor McGregor is the superstar this division, this organization has been long waiting for. He just, if I'm not mistaken, I was told that he signed a 6 to 7 fight deal, which, holy crap, you think about fights that could come up for him. We talk about GSP, you talk about giving Nate Diaz a rematch, bringing Nick Diaz into the picture, getting a rematch with Khabib, Tony Ferguson, Showtime Pettis. There's so much. There's rumors that Anderson Silva, which I think it's a horrendous idea, wants to come in and drop some weight and meet at a catch weight with Conor McGregor, which I think that is horrible for the UFC. Hopefully they don't pursue that. I think it's just doesn't make sense for the organization at this point. It doesn't make sense for Anderson Silva to try to come and fight someone who is so much more younger and faster than he is at this point. Don't want to give so much attention to Conor McGregor, because if you think about what Conor McGregor does to fighters is that he beats them before they walk into that octagon. Conor McGregor has so gotten into the head of Khabib's whole camp. Not only from Khabib himself, but the managers and the other guys that he roams with in AKA. This is going to be, by far, stylistically, the best fight you guys will ever see. This has everything writing on it. This is the best fight in UFC history. And we've said this before, but we talk about someone like Khabib who has completely dominated the weight class. He actually made weight at 155. Conor McGregor came at 154 this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. This is one of these fights that is going to make history. Whoever wins this fight, see, the great thing about this fight, if this fight comes really close, you could easily promote a rematch to this fight. Who do I have winning this fight? I will tell you this: Conor is one punch away from winning the fight, as we've all seen what he's done to every single fighter, from Eddie Alvarez to Jose Aldo. Then we got someone like Khabib who will just take you down and absolutely make you look like an amateur. I am extremely curious what Khabib's game plan is in this fight. I know what McGregor is. Looking forward to this fight, and I'm telling you, McGregor, from my understanding, has trained so hard to push this over the limit. He knows he might have to pull the 5-rounder on this card, and Khabib does this for a living. It's what he does. He grinds you out, he takes you down, he beats the Bojangles out of you. He's been doing it since he got into the UFC. He had a hard time making weight for most of his fights, but guess what? He's somebody who's now healthy, figured out a good training camp to go to, and most importantly, has the right health going into this fight. Who I have winning this fight? I don't fucking know. I can't pick a fighter. I will say one thing. McGregor is already up 2 rounds over Khabib with the show class that he's been doing in these press conferences. He beats you before he gets to the octagon. He is a mathematician when it comes to getting into your head, and he's done a phenomenal job so far. Khabib stands no chance in those press conferences, man. With that being said, let the best man win. I can't give you guys a fight. I can't. I will say this: fight goes to the ground, Khabib wins. Khabib decides to stand and bang with one of the best and most wittiest stand-up fighters of all time. You're not gonna get past first and second round. That's just my personal opinion. Guys, continue to tune in. Cannot wait for this fight. My brother couldn't make it. He's actually out in vacay in the homeland with his family. So let's cross our fingers and let's really pray that this fight goes through, because there's always some freaking disaster that happens last minute. I don't believe this fight's gonna happen till I'm sitting in front of my boy's couch watching this fight and see both of them walk into that octagon. Till then, everything is a massive question mark for me. Alright guys, tune in. You guys already know we're our Instagram, the Will and Rock Podcast, our Twitter, the same. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to the people who've been subscribing, and thank you for the people who've been leaving comments in our YouTube page. We need it. If you guys want more information, anything, any questions you guys have, please feel free to go into YouTube and take care of that for us. Alright? Peace, everyone.